The idea of Khalistan is inspired by the carving out of Pakistan on a religious basis during independence. From time to time, this notion has been revived and exploited by many actors like the ISI and radical leaders. While some exploited it to fulfill their political aspiration for a separate nation of Khalistan, others like the ISI misused it to hit India with cowardice. This is now becoming a cancer for national security. But when India has decided to deal with it before it turns violent, anti-India terrorist acts are taking place in Western countries. India too has initiated dealing with the incapable governments across the world. Namaste and welcome to TFI Post. I'm your host Paurish Gupta. After the joint operation of the Punjab government and central forces was initiated in Punjab, many of the Khalistani terror outfits across the world were activated. As part of the toolkit procedures, the political as well as so-called social voices simultaneously came out together. At first, to attack the integrity of India, the Khalistani terrorists gathered outside the Indian High Commission in the UK. They vandalized the mission and hurt Indian sentiment by taking down the national flag. The Khalistani terrorists indulged in abusive language with anti-India and pro-Khalistani sloganeering. Just a day before, some more members of the Toolkit gang disguised themselves as the protesters and gathered outside the Indian consulate in San Francisco. The Khalistan supporters put up 2 tents in front of the Indian consulate and 8 people sat on a dharna. The morons were trying to showcase themselves as pacifists. Within no time, they realized that they could get nothing from the pacifist way, as terrorists could never be peacemakers. They defaced the wall of the mission to blow the outrage. On Sunday morning, around 200 Khalistani sympathizers gathered outside the consulate. Though local police put up security barricades, protesters swarmed in and planted 2 Khalistani flags at the consulate. When Indian security officials removed the flags and handed them over to protesters, pro-Khalistan activists broke through the barricades and used flag posts to attack the consulate, smashing windows and hitting the doors. The consulate provided local police with the name and addresses of 6 people responsible for the vandalism, who were caught on video. People familiar with the events believe 3 groups, namely the Sikh Youth Alliance, Shiromani Akali Dal Amritsar and Sikh for Justice, were behind the protest. In particular, the role of Jasjeet Singh Chela and Fremont Gurdwara has come under the scanner. John Kirby, National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House, criticized the incident by stating that the vandalism is absolutely unacceptable. The South and Central Asia Bureau of the State Department also took cognizance of the incident and criticized it. It said, and I quote, "It is our priority to defend the security and the safety of these facilities and the diplomats who work within them," unquote. In a separate statement, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum strongly condemned the attack on the Indian mission in San Francisco, California. The US authority has assured the Indian envoy that the security at the Indian consulate will be raised. However, the protests are still ongoing outside the Indian consulate, but the security forces have taken control of the area and no mishaps are going to happen. But this is also the result of diplomatic pressure that India is putting on countries across the globe. It was evident earlier this month when Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was on an official visit to India. He was given a grand welcome, but PM Modi also emphasized the Khalistani activities going on in Australia and the vandalism of mandirs. Albanese responded by stating that strict action would be taken against those involved in mandir vandalism and extremist protests against India. After he returned to Canberra, actions were taken against the perpetrators of the fight during the ridiculous referendum 2022. On January 29, 2023, the Khalistani terror outfit known as Sikh for Justice carried out referendum 2022, during which Indians holding national flags were attacked by gathered SFJ radical elements. After nearly 2 months of terrorism act, the Victoria Police have finally released the pictures of 6 perpetrators. It has urged the public to help in identifying these criminals. However, 2 suspects are already in police custody after being arrested at the referendum site. The government is cracking down on supporters of Khalistan terrorists. The issue of the radical act outside the Indian High Commission outside London was being handled loosely by the UK government. Seeing it, India has diplomatically fed London the taste of its own medicine by downgrading the security outside the British High Commission in New Delhi. The government under Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in no mood to let so-called champions of civil liberties thrash the fabric of Indian integrity. In line with that, Canada, the haven of Khalistani cowards, is facing the ignorance of Indian government. It has been almost 5 years since Trudeau has been entertained for an official visit. It is just because of his tacit support for terror outfits running inside Canada and targeting Indians. It is more like a message to Canada to get rid of its malicious policies against India, or it will suffer the same fate as the British High Commission. India is currently confronted with both domestic as well as international challenges. While India is capable of dealing with internal problems appropriately, the foreign governments need to understand that any act against India or their land will have unprecedented consequences.